Hello, everyone. So good to see you all. Um, I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I'm going to just do a very brief introduction as to who I am in case you don't know me well, and then I'm ready for your questions right after that. So, my name is Becky Parker Geist. I am the CEO of Pro Audio Voices. Our company is about 10 years, just celebrated 10-year anniversary, which was a big, exciting success. Thank you very much. And I actually started in the audiobook industry in 1981. So that'll give you a little context around technology. Wow, huge changes I've seen over the years. Um, and then I'm also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association. I've been doing that role for about 10 years and other roles as a board member, et cetera, and member, for years prior to that. And I'm also the host of Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams, the podcast that explores and tries to provide a lot of great content and information around the audiobook world, both for that's production, distribution, marketing, all of it. And we're just about to hit our 200th episode at the end of this year, so that's also like, thank you, another success. So I'm celebrating here with you all of that. And so that's who I am. And I know that we have about 45 people registered for the call today. I left it, I wanted to make it long enough so I could get to all of your questions and address all of those as best I can. And I had just a couple questions that came in by email. I will answer those at the end so that I can make sure that everyone who is here, that I can answer your questions first, and then we'll jump into those. So I think the easiest way to proceed will probably be if you do the little Zoom raising hand, if you know how to find that on your Zoom screen. And if anyone is ready with a question right off the bat, you can jump in. If not, I'll go to that other list of questions I have. So is there anyone who has something that they've been wanting to ask?
Where's
Yeah.
where's my hand?
Oh, it should be in reactions.
Reaction.
The reactions, there
Oh,
should be a
got
little
it.
raise hand thing. Yes. Laura, so good you're here.
Thank you, Becky. Well, I'm sure a lot of people have dealt with this very same question. And I know there's a technology that you use, so I'm really hoping you can tell me all about it. But I enjoy editing
Mhm.
as much as almost as much as narrating.
I'm just gonna
I
see
hear
if there's.
something.
Hold on, we're just gonna mute anyone who's not talking right now, just for
Okay.
clarity. Okay, go ahead.
But yeah, I've been a production director for the last couple of decades at when I was working outside of the house. Now that I'm here with the greatest commute in the world,
Yeah.
um, I do still enjoy editing. But when you're doing audiobooks, you need to be quick. And it's a very time consuming process. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, are there any tips? Can you tell me about Positron? Is
Yeah.
that helpful?
Yes. Yeah. So positron is a great layer and like first step in
Mm.
the proofing process. And it's AI. So, it's quick, but it's not comprehensive. So we,
Ah.
the you would what I recommend is do a pass with positron, pick up all the things that are problematic, and then do a listen, and you'll probably be able to go smoothly through most of it. Also, in positron, there's an option for, you get to listen to each one, and you can jump from each thing that they picked up on to the next, and that way you can listen. A lot of times it'll be nothing, or they misunderstood, or it might help you identify, oh, that was actually a typo, that doesn't make sense, things like that.
Oh.
um but the tools, and it's a really good tool. So we're big
So
fans. Yeah.
positron doesn't help with the wave file size, getting the
Right.
right file size so that you have the right RMS at the end of it all,
Yeah. Yeah.
or the spacing or anything like that.
They do some with spacing. They'll let you know if they think a space is too long.
Oh,
So that's a thing. They have plans for being able to provide more information about whether your files are too spec with the RMS and such. So that's coming, but I don't think that they've rolled that out as yet.
okay.
Um, there are a wonderful array of new tools and technology, and I'm not an expert on all of those, but we do have lots of engineers that sort of keep their fingers more on the pulse. So I'm also happy to direct you to somebody that may have an even better answer. I
Uh,
I will just mention, and I have not delved into it, but I did have a call with someone on our team who works with Hindenburg systems, which
uh,
from the quick look I took looks pretty awesome in terms of audiobook narration, but
huh,
haven't explored it yet. So that's something you might want to do a little research on.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else have a question? All right. Oh, yeah. Melody? Is that right?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry I couldn't find raise hand. I found clap hand and I
Oh,
found thumbs up.
that's all right.
Um, anyway, thank you, Becky, for doing this.
Very much.
Um, I have a question. I want to record my own audio,
Mhm.
and I understand there's a way that you can a recording studio from afar, like where you are. I'm in Massachusetts. Where are you in California?
I'm in Oregon now, Portland,
In
Oregon.
Oregon.
Yeah.
Um, I guess the producer's in your ear and they can edit and everything, and you're recording from home with your microphone, and they can do everything and also upload everything to the right places and all that. Do you do that by any chance?
Yeah, we have some remote recording options as well. There are a few different ways to do that. And some of that depends on what your home studio space options are. Like if you're in a really noisy place, that's probably not going to work out in terms of using your own space as a studio because you're still going to get a lot of noise that's going to be a problem. If you have a quiet space, and one where we can help you get it set up so that you're going to have decent sound, then we would do that because it gives you a lot more flexibility if you are able to record from home. In
Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, in the other scenario, then we would ideally look for a local recording studio for you. And then in terms of that having somebody who's directing you, that is definitely an option that we also offer, is where you can have somebody with you throughout your recording. Sometimes we've done it where like I've been directing an author narrator and at a certain point they were like, "No, I think I've got it now." And it seemed like they did, and so she just proceeded on her own after that point. So there's a lot of flexibility around that and many different options. In
And
terms
how
of
do you I'm sorry, go ahead.
just the piece about the audio files and dealing with that piece of technology, there are also options for that. So one option is that we teach you how to um, save those files on your own system and send them in to us for post-production. Another option is like through Source Connect, where we're actually getting the audio files in the process of the recording directly.
I see.
Yeah.
How do you price this type of thing? The scenario I'm talking about.
Yeah. Really, the best thing to do is schedule a discovery
Consult.
call. Yeah. And then we can
Okay.
really look at the specific parameters of where do you need help? Where do you not need help? Where do you really want to do it yourself? Where do you not? Where do you need that extra support? So,
Okay. Thank you very much.
oh, you're most welcome. Anyone else here on the call with a question? No? Okay. I'm going to jump over to then. So what I'm looking at is not going to be all of you. So if you're waving your hand at me, it's hold on, let me just adjust things a little bit so I can still see you. Okay. So we had a question from somebody who said, I will be self-publishing my first novel. I have a lot of characters. I plan to record the male voice and hire someone for the female roles. I may need help in mixdown. My question is making the book available, and it seems that Audible is the best for such a project. So there are actually several items in here I'm going to go ahead and address. The first is self-publishing your first novel. Congratulations. Yes, success. It's a big deal. For all of you who are authors, I get it. I'm an author myself, and even though I've been steeped in the indie publishing realm, I was amazed at how many challenges there were or questions I had in the process once I got into actually publishing it. Okay, having a lot of characters, great. Okay, in terms of planning to record the male voice and hire someone for the female roles, my first question around that would be, are is are you planning to record uh, all the male voices and have one female record all the female voices? I'm going to address this a little bit generally in some ways because I don't know the answers to these questions. The first is this question might be coming out of an assumption, or the plan might be coming out of an assumption that when you have dialogue, you need different voices to voice those different characters. That is not typical in audiobooks, although it is certainly a fun and exciting doing a full cast project where you do have many voices as a part of the project reading those different characters. So the first thing I would do would be I'd want to look at that script, that manuscript, and see if it is suggesting to me that, oh, this is really dialogue heavy. This would work well as a full cast audiobook. And if not, it might be that we just need to adjust that assumption. And if he's going to read as the main narrator, then helping him understand how to do the different roles for each character. And for any of you who are narrators, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then help in the mix down. So I just want to bring up a couple items here that people may not be aware of when you're thinking about having multiple voices. So one is that each person, typically, almost exclusively, is narrating in a different space with a different microphone. And for every difference that you are, and in a different external space as well, because our booths only do so much to mitigate, the leaf blowers and the airplanes and the HVAC and all that stuff. So there are a lot of factors just in terms of the basic sound and, the change in microphone, the change in booth. All of those are going to create a different sort of what we call a room tone, different sound of silence. You might think silence sounds like nothing, but actually it has a real sound. And so it's a little bit like you can kind of sense if you walk into an auditorium versus walking into a walk-in closet, you can kind of feel the difference. It's a little bit like that. So as we think about having multiple voices, then that room tone is going to be different for each one. So a part of the post-production process is about getting those sounds to sound as close as possible. And I also want to say that it should be part of the pre-production process as well, because initially you want to get that recording as close as you can so people sound as much as possible like they're in the same space. And that then makes the post-production much more effective and successful. So that's just one aspect. And then typically, again, not always, but typically, if you're doing a full cast project, then you may also be thinking about music and sound effects because they often go hand in hand. Not every time, but very, very often. Now, the next part of the question was about distribution, making the book available. And I'm going to just differentiate one other thing about distribution and marketing, because a lot of people will join those together and think of them as kind of the same thing, but they're actually quite different. Distribution is literally getting your book into some place where a customer can then purchase it. And marketing is about letting people know where your audiobook is. Okay, so think of it in those two ways. One is getting it on the shelf, and the other is, the news. Hey, go get it on the shelf. Okay, so the question, going back, he said, my question is making the book available, and it seems that Audible is the best for such a project. I disagree with that assumption that Audible is the best. Okay, Audible is without doubt the biggest audiobook marketplace, but biggest does not mean best. So one of the biggest challenges with Audible is that they're going to pay you as an author the smallest royalties. The second biggest problem with them is that they're going to give you no control. So I just recently, another author was expressing her frustration. She just recently launched. She went through ACX, which I highly do not recommend. And then, so she was only able to get the book on Audible and iTunes, and then discovered, but I have no control. That's exactly right. And with other audiobook distribution options, we typically use Authors Republic as a distribution to get it out to the widest number of channels. At least in that context, you are able to suggest a price for your audiobook, but you've got to remember it is only a suggestion. It is an MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail price. Now, many retailers will accept that price and go with it, but they are not obligated to. None are. And on ACX, they won't even ask you because they don't care what you want to sell it for. They're going to sell it for whatever they want to sell it for. Now, the good news, if you haven't heard it yet, yeah, and I've been shouting out about it a lot. So the good news is that there is now, as of this year, as of July 2023, there is a better solution, which is Amplify Audiobooks. And that is a place, it's kind of like the Etsy of audiobooks in that it's like a mall where each author has their own store for their own audiobooks. And on Amplify Audiobooks, you're going to have all the controls that you need and all the information you need. So the big things that you're missing everywhere else except for on Amplify are you can't control. So you get to control pricing on Amplify. You can set your price, change it anytime. The change is, happens right away. So you're in control in that way, including all of your information. I don't know if, as authors, if you've ever had the experience of doing your book description and then you decide, oh, I think it would be better if I had changed this first line, and then it takes months for it to actually show up in the place. This is instantaneous. You do it, you hit save, it's changed. So controlling your information, being able to run a promotion. So that's, where you schedule a sale. This week, my book is on sale for this amount. So you can schedule promotions. You can do discount codes. Now that's all kinds of discount codes. You can do 50% off or $2 off. So a dollar amount, a percentage, and you can put limits on that. You can have an expiring coupon, things like that. You can also do 100% off if you want to give it away free to somebody, either in, a review request or something else. In terms of reviews, just keep in mind that when you create a coupon for a free audiobook on Amplify, your review, you're never guaranteed, no matter where you get a coupon, that they're going to post a review, right? So when you, so if they post a review, they're not going to be able to get their book on Amplify and post a review on Audible, just to be clear. And again, Audible is not your best place to be selling your audiobooks. So on your websites, you want to make sure you're pointing to your Amplify page, not to Audible, because you want the best results. Okay, so that's coupon codes. The fourth really, really, really valuable thing that you get in Amplify audiobooks is access to your own customer information. Just, name and email address. They are opted in when they purchase your audiobook, so you know who bought your audiobook, and you're able to follow up with them, to build your community with them, to build your following. That is, you can add them to your email list. Just always, you should always make sure that you have an unsubscribe option as part of your newsletter. That's just standard. So I think that is the main thing that I wanted to cover. So you get a whole lot more royalties, a whole lot more control. Nancy.
Is Amplify part of the Pro Audio company? Are they aligned?
It is. It is a platform we developed.
I
Yes.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so that was answering his question about whether Audible was the best. I will also just say it's good to also have your book on Audible. I'm not saying don't put it anywhere else. You could choose to and have it be exclusive, but that's totally your option, because Amplify Audiobooks is a standalone, non-exclusive platform. What I do recommend is, if you have an audiobook that you haven't launched yet, is start on Amplify. And the reason is because when you send out that first announcement about your launch, you're going to probably at that point get some of your biggest response from your, dedicated fans. So you'll want those people to be getting it from the place where you're going to earn much higher royalties and know who bought it. That was the other piece I missed. The royalties. Okay, huge difference. Just to give you a general idea on the difference in earnings from Amplify versus Audible. For a $14.95 sale, which is the price of a credit generally on Audible, and that's the way many of their subscribers will purchase audiobooks. Audible has a very complicated formula. It's not clear. I don't know how they get away with not making it clear what their contract is, but somehow they do. And you'll earn about $2.72. Well, that's actually a little less than that. For a $14.95 sale, you'll earn a little less than $2.72. If somebody buys it as a subscriber, but they buy it as an additional book, that's when they earn the $2.72, or you earn that. On Amplify, for the exact same sale where you've decided you're going to sell it for $14.95, you'll get $9.71. So if you start adding that up book by book, it doesn't take very many sales for you to see a really big difference. So that's because you're getting 65% of the gross price that you choose to sell it for, versus a net price of, everyone's taken out their cut, all their expenses for running it on their platform have been covered, and now there's a little bit of profit left over. They're going to give you 25% of that. 25% of that. It's really, it can be very discouraging as an author, and I found it really frustrating for our clients, over many years, um, how little they were able to earn in royalties from sales through Audible. And so, yeah, Amplify is a dream come true for me because we can really help our clients succeed in a much bigger way than has been possible before. Okay. Any other questions from the group who are present here on the call? If not, I'll go to my. Okay, Rob, go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. So I'm coming at this from a little bit different perspective.
Okay.
So I'm a voice actor,
Okay.
and when I made the turn to jump over to voice acting, which is still it's new and not new, depending on how you want to look at it. Audiobook narration was one of my focus areas. I'm in, character work is more interesting to me than doing commercials. Commercials is just where most VOs actually manage to eat. Um, the So I actually had not heard of your company until a week or two ago, when one of my VO coaches really featured you as somebody that I needed to be engaging with. Which is interesting because she doesn't do anything in the audiobook realm. It's a disclaimer she has with me about, because she will work with everything else I do, but not audiobooks.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, both with more independent organizations such as yours, but in a general sense, before I sort of had the resume to work directly with, say, a Penguin or somebody, one of the major production houses like that.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way of engaging with these sort of varying models such as yours? So you're working in a more engaged and consultative way, as near as I can tell, versus pretty much any other platform out there or any other service, however you want to look at it. What's the best way to turn that into something where I'm going to generate successful fits? So it isn't just about me going out and get and oh, look, I'm going to get a paycheck. It's about doing work that turns into something great. And so what's the best way to engage and start building that book of experience?
Yeah. Well, I think there are a couple things. One is, go out and, including our platform, we'd love to have you, apply to be on our narrator team. But there are a lot of other audiobook producers as well that, where you can get started with that. We do audiobook production has always been our core offering. And, but we have expanded a lot, in terms of obviously distribution for Amplify audiobooks. And we do have marketing programs, and it's all grown out of my passion and determination to help our authors be really successful. So, there are opportunities. We're actually in the process right now of doing interviews as we're growing our team to fill different roles, so depending, if you're focused, if you're really just talking about voiceover, I would say the best place to start is start submitting your demo to all the different platforms that you can find, all the different production companies you can find. And, that's probably the best way to start, because, if you start working directly with authors and you're not familiar with all the other aspects of what goes on in the production of an audiobook, then you might not be delivering the kind of, great experience that you'd like, you should be
And that
delivering.
matters to me a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. Hang on, I think I need to turn off my, okay, here we go.
As a side note, I being I almost said recovering, but that would not be accurate. Geek. So the technical side,
Mhm.
is always of interest to me. So I find myself interested in the production side of the house
Yeah.
a bit also. So producing
Yeah.
is also of some interest to me. It's not the core passion, but it's um, I by my nature I like knowing everything about the whole, and
Yeah.
I struggle if I don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's just it becomes one of those things of additional interest. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know
it sounds
how.
like that might be an area that you guys are also looking for people. And do you take people if they have a reasonable basis for that? Do you take people that don't have prior quote unquote production experience?
Depending on the role, it's as I like to describe it, it's sort of like, at least for our company, we're looking primarily for people who kind of belong on the bus. I forget who's the one of those famous authors, who wrote one of those classic business books. He talks about it's more important to know who should be on the bus rather than necessarily which seat they should be in, because people can move around, right?
Oh
But
man, I was a public speaker before COVID hit
okay,
on leadership.
okay. Oh,
And
so
and one of my core speeches was hire teams, not talent.
yes, exactly. Yes. So we take that approach. We feel like it's really important to find people who are fully in alignment with our own values and that are, good communicators and want to be there, have a passion like we each do, for the work that we're doing. I think audiobook, work in the audiobook realm is so, so important in the world. And, we're changing the world every day with stories. So let's make sure we're doing that in a really good way. Um, and Nancy, I'm just seeing your question in chat. So yes. Okay, so the question is asking about BISAC or genre codes, and I'm happy to talk about that. That's something that in the self-publishing or indie publishing process, you're always going to be faced with, regardless of what format you're using. What will differ by format is in the distribution process, which categories or which, you know, um, subcategories are available to you to use. In print, it's generally pretty full, the BISAC. So the BISAC stands for like book industry study something. I don't know. I can't remember what the acronym is, but basically these are the genres or the categories. It's kind of like in the bookstore, it would be what section is your book going to show up in? Where are they going to shelve it? So just take that concept and then think digital in terms of providing that information. If you are doing a print book, then of course that's the real thing. That's where they're gonna shelve it. So you want to look for ideally the most niched down subcategories that are appropriate. So you want to look for the very best fit for your book or your audiobook. And then and depending on the platform that you're working on, it's going to be, you might have three options. That's sort of typical, three options for your book. Um, let's see. The reason ideally, you want to avoid the ones that are, quote, general. So, like juvenile, subcategory animals, subcategory general. It would not be as good as, instead of general, subcategory cats, if your book is more about cats. Now, cats might be less appropriate, so it's okay to go, that next level up. But in general, avoid the general. And try and, get it down into the smallest subcategory that you can. Now, there are some, Dave Chesson, who does Kindlepreneur, has some wonderful tools available to help. Publisher Rocket, I think, is the name of the program. And it's really helpful in terms of the Amazon ecosystem to figure out which categories might be the best for you. And I say that in that you're always looking first at your content, but then from there, you might have like 10 that feel like a really good fit for you. And if that's the case, then how do you go, where do you go from there? Ideally, you'll want to be having less competition in your category. So if you can get your book categorized in a way that where there are fewer other books in that category. I'm talking mostly about Amazon here, but this would also apply in other places like Barnes and Noble. Okay. So if you have fewer in the competition, then when someone looks in that genre, yours is more likely to rise to the top. You're more likely to have a higher ranking. Okay. So those are some, and that Publisher Rocket tool can be very, very helpful to figure all of that out, because it's otherwise it's more challenging. And then I'm going to pull up chat again here. Okay. All right. Nancy, we can chat more about this BISAC situation and Publisher Rocket. Okay. Now I want to just step over now into the Amplify world in regards to the categories. And just to let you know that on Amplify, the categories are much bigger right now because there are fewer audiobooks there, which means that even in a larger, more general category, you're still rising. Your audiobook is rising to the top because, as the platform grows, we'll add more categories so that the that we're having those smaller groupings, which is better for the authors. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Any other questions right now from the group that's here? Otherwise, I'll go to my other list. No? Okay. And feel free also, if you're not able to raise your hand or something, to just unmute yourself and grab my attention that way. That's also okay. Okay, we talked a little bit about what an MSRP is, manufacturer's suggested retail price, just knowing and how that fits into the audiobook world. We touched a little bit on what you need to narrate your own audiobook in answering Melody's question about if you want to have someone else who's doing everything remotely. There is also, depending on your skill level and what your interest is and skills in terms of being able to narrate your own. There are, and we at Pro Audio Voices do offer this as an option. There are ways that we can support you both in getting your home studio space set up for that, and then also doing all the rest of it. So the post-production and all of that. I will say that as a general rule, unless you have a really good reason for narrating your own as an author and an unexperienced narrator, or have it like a really strong passion for moving forward in that direction, as a general rule, I recommend using a professional narrator, because it is, as our narrators who are here could affirm, it is a whole set of skills. It takes, typically, years of development, training, understanding how to use the equipment properly, but mostly how to effectively communicate and perform the text. And so the assumption, which I think is very prevalent, is that you sit down in front of a microphone and you read your book and it's good. And it doesn't usually work out that way for it to be the it being good part. um, so there's a lot that goes into it. And if, however, that is your absolute commitment, and there are reasons sometimes where it does make sense. And there are authors who do have some of those skills enough to where, it's going to be okay. And then there are some that have, tremendous passion for doing the project, even if they don't have the skills to pull it off. So there's a lot of variables in there, but, and then, unless there are any other questions, is the audiobook investment worth it? Here, I have some feedback on that question. The first is yes, it is worth it. But as a simple answer, a one-word answer, yes. But there are some factors that I want to throw in there to make it clearer as to some of the hows and the whys it can be worth it. First of all, one of the big challenges, and I think one of the reasons why this comes up so frequently, is because of the fact that the industry, up until this year with Amplify Audiobooks, the industry has really made it very difficult to be able to get a return. And so with the launch of Amplify Audiobooks, it gives a way for you to get that return and to build that community and to really have the tools to be able to be successful with your audiobook. When you're relying, and I had a hard time answering this question, before Amplify came, before we were able to develop it, because honestly, it was pretty hard to justify if getting a return financially was your primary goal. Now, in terms of getting it out there, which is actually, I think, maybe the biggest goal for most authors, is get it out there and get more people engaging with your material, absolutely worth it. Because there are an increasing number of us who just really like to listen to audiobooks for our books, just maybe don't have the same time that we, it takes longer often to read a text than it does to listen to an audiobook. And you can listen in so many different contexts and while doing other things. And so there's so many benefits. So there are a lot of people who just don't read books or ebooks anymore. They just listen. And so you're missing out on all those people if you don't do an audiobook. So that's maybe the biggest reason. But then there are also other things like if you plan your audiobook well, and if you have some other sort of adjunct goal, let's say, for example, that you're a coach, and you have coaching services, and you're doing this book that's about, I don't know, maybe it's about meditation. Well, I'm going to use that example of meditation because we've done many books that have meditations or exercises in them. And so there's so much benefit that you could do in doing an audiobook, because now with those meditations, for example, you could use those, you can pull them out of the audiobook, include them there, but then also take them and make them available on your website, right? So now you have an additional, it could be a product, it could be a lead magnet, something that you give away for free to add value. So that, and this is similar for exercises, same kind of thing, or honestly, even like checklists and charts and other kinds of visuals, there's so much opportunity to invite people to get even more value by coming to your website. So, for example, for someone who's a speaker, a presenter, if they have an audiobook out there and they're drawing people to their website because of some appropriate content that they have in their audiobook, then someone may come to their website and go, oh, you know what? I'm part of an organization. I'd like to hire that speaker. So now you see your audiobook. If you think of it as the, $10 that you earned if you were on Amplify Audiobooks, that you earned from selling that audiobook, that's nothing compared to what you just earned as a speaker. You may have a coaching program. And similarly, you may sell other products that you have or services that you offer. That is a way to start thinking about your bigger author life and what you have to offer and how your audiobook can actually you can leverage that to help you in that process in that overall process of building of your sort of ecosystem as an author. All right. And that is best looked at during pre-production. So I'll share a little bit about pre-production because so many companies just don't even do pre-production. That is kind of boggles my mind, because I think of that as there is so much gold in pre-production. Why would you just bypass it? It's not just casting. It's not just figuring out whether you're going to say and slash or and or things like that, which is part of it. But every audiobook has opportunities to further engage the listener. And one of my personal favorites is doing a bonus interview. As a listener, I love listening to bonus interviews. I feel like I can then connecting with the author. So I really like those. So but here's, I don't think anyone else, I haven't listened to any others. So let me know if any of you have, but I haven't listened to any other audiobooks that do what we do, which is we record an interview and then we put in the first part of that interview. And then we invite the listener to the website to hear the full interview. Is now it's well, you're halfway through the story. You want to, so it's a great way to invite them to just continue that journey with you. You get them over to your website, and now they can go, oh, wow, they've got another book. I got to check that out, and now you're really building your following in that way. So I think, there's just for nonfiction authors, there's typically even more opportunity. But for fiction authors, there are plenty of opportunities as well, even if it is as simple as, or as, it could be a sneak preview to another book in your series. And if you are doing a series, you absolutely should have a sneak preview or sample from the next one coming up. Or the bonus interview idea. Or even if it's just in your about the author, include your website. I mean, at a bare minimum. I once talked with a narrator. We did not end up working together. It was clear to me we were not in alignment. It would not have been a good fit. But this was for a project where we were talking with the author, and this narrator had recorded his previous book. And so that was how we connected. So we were figuring out whether we were going to whether we were going to produce and whether he was going to narrate the next book in the series. And when I talked with him about I mentioned the about the author, and he scoffed with such scorn. No one wants to listen to about the author. Why would anyone include an about the author? And I thought, wow, you are, first of all, very closed-minded, and secondly, you're missing out, and all of your clients are missing out. It was more his attitude than anything else. I mean, if he had said, oh, why would you do that? Then I could have explained, and, it would have been a different conversation. But he was like, yeah. So there's always opportunity. let's look for it. And that's part of what we do in our process at Pro Audio Voices. When we have somebody book a discovery call, then we're trying to get a sense of like, what are your goals? Where are you headed with this project? What's that big picture for you? Because I think all of us need to know that. And if you're an author and you haven't asked yourself that question yet, ask yourself that question, because it is valuable to know the answer. And then we'll look at their manuscript and we'll start pulling out some of these opportunities, noticing what those are, and making some recommendations around ways that you can leverage your audiobook to really help you move towards those goals that you've identified. Okay, let's talk then a little bit about audiobook marketing. So, um, so with Amplify Audiobooks, you're able to use some of these tools. And so I'll talk a little bit about like running a promotion. So I described how you can do that on Amplify. The question then would be when and why. So, and maybe I covered this already, but I don't think that I did it quite as fully. So the when would be ideally any time that you and that your book content that you want to run a promotion for has there's some occasion. Now, occasion doesn't have to mean holiday, but that it might be some trending news item. If what you've written connects with something that you just read in the New York Times, then you might want to connect those items, connect that article with what you have to offer, and put your book on sale at the same time as a way of sort of piecing it together with an incentive, right? I tend to think that that we have our reticulator activating system, that where we notice things that we have put some focus on, like if you're thinking about buying a Jeep and you think, oh, there's no Jeeps out there. And then you start thinking about buying a Jeep and suddenly there's Jeeps everywhere. They were always there, but we're noticing them now. Similarly, I think that when we are focused on the content of our book, that we are more apt to and are more likely to be looking in the places anyway, right? Just logically, that we might find that information about trending news that is appropriate to our content. So look for those as opportunities. Current events can be opportunities. That can be fiction or nonfiction. It all, it all works for all of that. So once you identify a reason why, like some occasion or event, some current event or something, then you want to think about, well, how long do I want to have it on sale? Okay. That thinking, you'll want to be factoring in things like the amount of urgency that you want to create, how much effort, what time span are you going to put into running that promotion? And by that, I mean shouting out to the world that it's available, right? So whatever that means. That might be a wrong use of word, shouting, because we don't want to be like, hey, buy my book, but you'll want to be letting people know, maybe from, posts that you're doing about how this current event relates to your book, and maybe just, you're doing some videos around that or something, and then linking to your audiobook. Well, how long is that campaign planning on running, and what kind of urgency are you trying to create? So it's just like, I just want to do this for a week. That's it. So run it for a week instead of just leaving it as an open-ended thing. We're again creating urgency. But every promotion, if you're going to be doing a promotion, you're going to have the most success if you actually let people know that it's happening, right? Yeah. If you look at the big stores, They're always like letting people know that there's a sale, whether it's a big sign in the window or flyers that go out that most people just throw into the recycling, whatever it is. They're doing their effort to let people know that it's happening. And so then discount codes and how they differ from promotions and what the different scenarios might be where you would use a discount code instead of running a promotion. So with a discount code, you're typically going to have your book at full price, and then you're going to offer these discount codes. You can do both at the same time. Just know that the discount code would be a further discount from whatever your sale price is. I want to throw in one other item here just to have it in your mind. Running a sale, a promotion, or using a discount code on Amplify, unless you make it like 80% off or something, you are most likely going to earn more, even at the discount, than you would on any other platform. So you can afford and still come out way ahead to run these specials when you're on Amplify. Well, you can't do them anywhere else anyway, so it doesn't matter. But but just keep in mind that it's not like you're cutting into the royalties in a way that would bring them all the way down to what Amazon or Audible is paying. You have control over it. You know exactly what you'll earn from each of those sales. Okay, so discount codes. This is a great scenario. Let's say you're doing a book launch, like an audiobook launch specifically. I will frequently say book instead of audiobook, only because it is a shorter word. Okay. So maybe you're doing a launch. That's a great opportunity, either for a promotion or for a discount code. And the discount code would be more like if you want to offer it to a group of people. Let's say, for example, you're part of a closed Facebook group, or you're part of some professional association, or you have you're a member of some other kind of group. So a group thing, or you're doing an event, you're presenting at an event. You can offer a code just for those people. And then that feels pretty special, you know. You can have them expire. So you're also creating some urgency, or you can leave it open. It's up to you. If they use it later, will you still be happy to have their purchase? Probably. So you might even say it's going to expire and then decide, maybe I'll just won't have it expire anyway. Or you could say, you don't have to say it's going to expire because we don't want to lie, but you could say, get it this week, and that will suggest to them that they should get it, right, or buy it today. Here's a coupon so you can get it at a discount today. Okay, things like that. Another way that you can leverage discount codes is if you have a group. Let's say, for example, you're writing educational material, and there is an organization maybe that is fundraising for a select group of people. Maybe it's special needs education, something, I don't know. And there's an organization that is doing some event, and they're fundraising, and they want to be able to offer something special that will be meaningful to their givers. And you have an audiobook that feels like it's a good fit for that. Well, you can use that discount code actually to create for them a way that is going to incentivize more giving, because those givers are going to receive this code. And then, or you could work it out a licensing deal with the group leader whoever's running that event, that giving event, such that, and we did this with an author, one of our authors, Lance Peaty, who wrote a complete history of the Rugby World Cup. And they were having a big fundraising luncheon. And for the VIPs who were, buying expensive tickets for that event that were it was a charitable event. They were each given a card that had a code on it so that those people could get the audiobook for free. And then the author made a financial deal with the organization to cover his cost for the audiobook. So he was earning something. The organization was being able to give this great benefit, and everyone won. You can also do a similar thing where you say, you create a coupon code and you can work it out to where it's like as many as are redeemed, that the organization will pay me X number of dollars. A lot of flexibility. So I'm just sort of, it's kind of a brainstorming in a way in terms of different ways that you can use these tools that not everyone may be thinking about. So I kind of want to like open those imaginative doors. There is so much that's possible in terms of the ways that, where we are in the world, who we're talking to, what our network is, who our followers are, who our audience is. So we just want to think creatively so that we can have the impact that we're trying to have in the world. We had another question that came up about if I have more than one narrator, will that cost more? That depends. It depends on a couple things mainly. If, for example, you have a dual narration book where you have one chapter is one person's point of view, next chapter is a different person's point of view. My novel is like that. It was two narrators, and I narrated the female point of view, and I had J.S. Arquin narrate the male point of view. And that was, and then towards the end, there were some, as the characters came together, then we did a little bit of what's called duet narration, where in the chapters that were the female point of view, we would use his voice for the male dialogue. So when you have just dual, so just alternating or changing points of view, it might not cost more for the actual narration itself, because each narrator will only be narrating their own chunk, and that's they would just get paid based on the chunk that they're narrating, that word count. When you're doing, but it could cost a little more, because if someone like our, Pro Audio Voices, for example, is casting that project, then there may be some additional cost because we're casting more than one person. The other thing that will come into play will be what we talked about earlier in terms of getting those sound studios to match up in terms of their sound. So post-production can be a little bit more expensive because you're trying to get them to sound like they're in the same room. But that's mostly what would be the impact. And then in terms of like the duet narration, where you're interchanging, you've got narrators going back and forth, talking to each other, more full cast kind of approach, that does cost more, mostly because it's much more complicated in terms of the post-production aspect of that. So that's the answer, I think, to that question. I was trying to, not sure I understand the comment in the chat, but difficult is the new cigarette. Any other questions from the group here at this point? I actually got through I think my entire list of questions that people emailed in. All right. Well, let's see. What else could I tell you about? I will mention, if you are not a subscriber to Audiobook Connection, would love to have you subscribe to the podcast because I do a lot of this kind of content. I will talk about. It's a weekly podcast, and yeah, and we also, I'm happy to take questions to answer on the podcast as well. Some of those are just me talking about, providing tips, and others are, um, others are interviews with authors that have had an audiobook created, and always ask them about their experience and what that was like for them, what surprised them, because I've been in the industry for so long. It's really helpful to hear what people coming in for their first time working on an audiobook, what is it that they are finding challenging or surprising, so that, a lot of times it's like that they didn't realize how complicated it was, or that it was a lot more fun than they expected, or how amazing it was to hear their audiobook actually in someone else's voice. Um, that's always fun as feedback. But and then sometimes I'll be interviewing someone else in the industry who maybe has expertise in marketing, or um, I don't know, all kinds of things. Goodness, I'd have to look back at my list. But I do try to, I'm always looking for people that I think are going to be able to bring some value. I was just talking with someone who runs Amy's Bookshelf Reviews, Amy Shannon, and she's been doing that. If you have an audiobook and are looking for a review, she does free reviews. I have been, my novel was reviewed by her, and uh, she was great, really great. Really cares about authors and helping them succeed as well. So, very much in alignment with what we're about at Pro Audio Voices. Um, yeah. Um, let's see. What else can I tell you? We just signed up for Patreon to be for the podcast, for anyone that would like to um, support the podcast. And then also, the benefit that we're offering there is that you'll have this kind of free access to me to answer questions whenever you like, because you'll be part of that supporter community. So, her name is Amy Shannon, and Amy's Bookshelf Reviews. If you look that up, you'll find her. And she's going to be, we're scheduling her interview to hope, come up soon. So, yeah, that's in process. We'll have her on the podcast. Well, I'll talk a little bit then about full cast productions, because it's one of, oh, no, well, let's talk about children's productions. We haven't talked really much about that. Sometimes authors will come to us with kids' books, and they're not sure if kids' books make sense in audio, but I love kids' audiobooks, and I think that there's a great need for them. I was just talking with one of our other team members who he lives in Mexico with his wife and their 5-year-old, and he was saying there's just not enough kids' audiobooks because you don't want them looking at the screen all the time, right? But they love hearing stories, and you can't always be reading stories to your kids. As fun as it is, there are other things that we grown-ups need to do. And there are also many adults who don't feel comfortable reading aloud to their kids because they don't feel comfortable. They're not confident with their own language skills. Um, and so they just don't. Or maybe it's some other reason, but there are parents who don't. Maybe they just feel so stressed out they don't have time. So and then also like bedtime. My granddaughters were they were having a tough time for a period there where they just like did not want to go to bed. And so they had my daughter and her husband, they're great parents. They're really consistent with their parenting. They have routines, but the kids just started going through this thing. I said, well, why don't I send you over some audiobooks? I'll read them some stories. And sure enough, that worked for, so that then, then they could go to bed. Lights are out, and I read them very deliberately with the idea that now we're going to sleep. So I, started off, and then get a little quieter, a little slower, and then a quiet good night at the end. You know, anyway, so there's a lot of great ways in which audiobooks can be great for kids. So sometimes the question that comes up is, well, what about the pictures? Obviously, most picture books are highly dependent on the pictures, but not always. So the best audiobooks for kids, I think, have text, as part of their story. There's sort of a natural, like it could be references to being outside, or um, something that suggests sound effects. It could be the dogs barking, the cats meowing, the fireplace crackling, any number of things. But um, those are, I think, the easiest to do. Though we've done several others, and it's really then about finding music that that um, that fits the tone of the book and the story. Ah, yes, Melody, this is a great question. Can you do a kid's audiobook but not do that book in paperback or ebook form? Just do it in audio. Yes, you can. Now that Amplify Audiobooks is available, because on the other platforms, they do require that it be in some other format already. But we can do audio first. And yeah, because, one of the big expenses for audiobook or for kids' books is the cost of illustrations. That can be exorbitant and really hard, a big challenge. So if any of you know authors who love to write children's stories, but have been hesitant to, feel like the hurdle to get them into print is too vast, that audio is an option, and it's much more cost effective. You can do a great kids book. One of the things that can make it really even more effective is if you have, because they're so short, is if you have do a bunch of them all at one time. That works out really well. And then Rob will get to you in a second. Can doing an audiobook with sound effects without partial moments of music, does that work? Yes, it absolutely does work. And that's where I think, even if you have a print book where you've got pictures, I kind of think of those are like the enhancements to the story. Well, in audio, we have sound effects and music that are enhancements to the story. So it's just shifting it out. And it can be for kids' books. They're short enough. You can do them on a CD if you want. Um, just keep in mind it's a fading technology, and you still have to package it. So, I mean, you can make it. People could potentially, if you want to send them an audio file, they can download it and just burn it, or you can burn it onto a CD, and if you have friends that you want to do it that way. But I don't think it's generally worth the financial investment to get it all packaged up as a CD.
In this vein, child's books, great example, but really it could be any genre. If we're submitting a example of our work, whether it be to you or somebody else, is there a particular resource you would suggest to get content? I mean, you guys are great because you're only looking for 45 seconds to a minute. Um, more common is anywhere from 2 to 5 on audiobooks.
Yeah.
And so trying to walk that line between having content that's real, for lack of a better term, and at the same time that I'm not stomping all over some author's rights, because
Right.
you know, even though my book is in the technical space, you know, I had a bestseller back in the day,
Mm.
and so I'm super sensitive to, you know,
Sure.
to authors' rights issues.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good. And yeah, we narrators, I think, really need to sort of keep that in mind, because sometimes we're asked to do things that are violating authors' rights, or authors are trying to get us to violate someone else's rights with music or sound effects and such. But for this, you're not distributing it in terms of, you're not trying to sell it. So just reading something from somebody's book aloud, um, it would be fine for you in your, at the end of your demo reel, or even the beginning, to give credit to that author, but no one's going to sell that. And so you're not really violating their rights, I don't think, in any way that is. I wouldn't consider it a violation, but I'm not an attorney, but I don't think the author would feel violated as well, because you're not trying to earn
I
anything from it.
appreciate that
Yeah.
reassurance, because it's easy to think, to just dismiss, oh, they're not going to care. They're glad it's getting exposure, whatever. And that becomes a mentality. Well, that's what
Yeah.
you hope anyway, because you want to use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to make sure I'm being respectful of those
Yeah.
kind of things
It's
and adhering to whatever norms are that I may not be familiar with.
right, right. The big thing is when you're using somebody else's material in something that where you're earning money from it. Now, you've that's not that you've
Yeah,
crossed a line. Yeah.
that's an easy ethics question
Yeah.
to answer. And
Yeah.
I'm a complete nut for ethics. So
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah. So, so just sort of continuing on in terms of the children's project. Oh, actually, I know that I think Catherine joined in. But if anyone has a question, at this point, I'm rambling a bit, but just trying to answer questions people might have. Since we don't have any others that have come up. So, um, talking about children's books. So we approach those is once you get that manuscript, then it's, if there are pictures already, we like to see those as well, to see what is in the imagination of the author if it's not clear from the text. But we also we've looked at some manuscripts where, okay, there's a crackling fire in the picture, no reference whatsoever to it in the text. If we put that crackling fire in as a sound effect, that's going to be confusing, because the listener has no context visually, right? So we have to also pay attention to what is the listener experience when they don't have a book in front of them, right? And it may be that there may be other sounds that are suggested in the text but are not in the pictures. And so we're always going to be trying to find what's an appropriate set of sound effects. And then for books where, and we've done several, where there's not really any reference to sound effects at all, or it's very um, yeah, there's not even, I don't know how to describe it, except that there is no sound effects that are would be appropriate. But there is certainly a tone. So, utilizing, sourcing music that we license, that can be used in the different places to then share that tone. And we can see the tone from the illustrations, even if there are no sound effects suggested. But I always think that having something, music, especially sound effects when appropriate, really lifts up a kid's book experience in ways that doing it dry, I just don't think would land as well. Wouldn't be as great an experience for the kids listening to it. And that is, so going into the full cast projects and when is that appropriate? So that's going to be most often appropriate if you have, if it's really heavy on dialogue, and that most of the narrative, non-dialogue sections, well, Well, just that those come in chunks. So you're going to have big chunks of dialogue. Another really appropriate context is for a screenplay or a theater script. Theater scripts are a little, can be trickier, all depending on the script. They can also have some really cool opportunities. And my background is in theater. I've always done theater. So, I bring all of that to that experience. And those are done. So you'll have multiple actors that get cast, and then recordings. The way we do it is that we have each of the actors are in their own recording studio, but we work together as a team. So we have directed recording sessions, and they're a blast. And we get some really great scenes. The reason for doing it that way instead of just having each person record their own is if they each record their own, and you're not going to they're not going to sound quite like one person is reacting to the other, because honestly they're not. They're just imagining what the way the other person might say it, and that other person might actually say it really differently. So it's it's important to have that group session. And there are a lot of challenges that go with that, and it's also really, really enjoyable. So it's one of my favorite things to do. So I get to bring all my skills together into a project. Yeah. Without that live interaction, and I'll be I'll be upfront about it, that we actually learned that from the very first one that we did. We're doing a screenplay, and this was many years ago now, but we were doing this screenplay, and it was we had fully produced songs. It's a really cool project. But Cosmic Cowboy, the musical, it's an alien story, but it's really mostly about the music. And we did have a situation where the actors were doing it individually, and so then I had to go in and we direct different people with the other person's audio, so that trying to get them to actually sound like they are reacting to that person. And they weren't. Yeah, one of the people who was the singer, which was why she was cast, is because she was a great singer, but she wasn't a great actor. So there was a lot of directing that that went into that project to sort of bring her up to speed as far as she could get. So, but still, the music is great, and it was fun working on that project because there were so many great elements, and it was a pretty fun story, silly and fun. All right, and so we got about 6 minutes left. Any other questions that have sort of popped into your mind? Well, I've been rambling on about the audiobook world. No? Feel free to just unmute and ask. If you don't have to raise your hand necessarily. Brandon.
Hey, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My question is pretty simple, and forgive me if this has been answered before, but you've mentioned your background in theater and stuff like that. I don't have any sort of like acting background as far as theater goes. I came from the podcasting and like live streaming world into VO and narration. Do you get much benefit from studying like theater at a local community college or something like that for this particular genre? Thank you.
Yeah. I would say that while acting training is really, really valuable, if you're looking for training for audiobook narration, I would actually look for someone who specializes in audiobook narration as a coach. And there are many of them out there. It's not something that I choose to do. I mean, I could, but I don't choose to because I'm so busy with everything else. But that would, I think, serve you better.
Sure. And I should have specified, like, I'm looking for something to supplement coaching because like, you know, I do work with a coach, and I do take the
okay.
courses and
Okay.
the you know, group reads and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make sure if it was something that maybe would be beneficial, that is something else I could look into.
Yeah. Well, it could be. I think here's the thing. It really is going to depend on the quality of the education at the community college. So that's where it's hard to say. You could find out if you could, watch a class or something like that and see if it feels like it would be helpful to you. Um, there are so many levels at which that might not be helpful. Like if they're just talking about the stage picture and what's upstage and what's downstage and stage left and stage right and like sort of there's some really basic beginning things that are going to have absolutely nothing to do with audiobooks.
How
But
about an improv group? Pardon me for interrupting you, but
yeah, no,
that might be, Brandon, would that be a possibility in your area? An improv group?
In my particular area, I actually live in a fairly rural area of North Carolina, so that's why I do most of my training, or try to get most of my training, through virtual means,
mm-hmm,
mostly Zoom. Um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but yeah, no, I can definitely look into improv as well. Like I'm also part of like Gravy for the Brain, and I know that they do some improv stuff with them as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Laura. Thanks. All right. Melody'd be happy to. Oh, you know what I should do? I'll put into the chat. Let's see if I can grab the link real quick. Hopefully. All right, 1 second. I'm going to grab from the chat the way to, or put into the chat, sorry, the link to set up a discovery call if that is something any of you would like to do. There we go. And those are generally reserved for authors as opposed to industry professionals, but I'm always happy to, do events like this. And feel free to email me. So my email is becky@proaudiovoices.com. If you have a question or if there's some kind of like programming that you would be interested in, we've just started this year doing some educational programs, both for authors and for narrators. We did one that was like narrating in the age of AI, which was really about getting, you're getting really connected with the story, because it is the depth of our humanity and our trueness as narrators that makes us indispensable in the audiobook world. AI doesn't belong in the booth. It never will. So, and then we did a recent program on PR and marketing for, it was mostly focused on public relations for authors. So if there is some kind of programming, or if events like this are helpful to you, we'd love to know about it, because, the more we can help people, authors, narrators, engineers, the more we can help, the better off our world is. And so that's what we're here for. Make a difference. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, if a question jumps into your mind later and you think, I forgot to ask that question, go ahead and send me the question. All right. All right. Okay. And then maybe I'll do a podcast episode on it or something. All right.
Hey, thank you, Becky.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And congratulations on Amplify too.
Thank you so much. Thank you.